Hey legends, and welcome back to the Sim Racing channel, where we're gearing up to talk quite a lot. So, Automobilista 2 and Reza specifically have dropped a ton of new information on us over the last day. The first was update 0.9.5.1, followed by their end-of-month development update, which released a ton of information about new and upcoming licensed content. Now, what we can do here is read through the lines, kind of anticipate what's going to come, roundabout where, and maybe infer based on some of the hints that they've dropped what exactly is going to come on top of what we already know. Now, there's a lot to get through here. I'm probably going to be talking for quite a bit. If that's not something you're into, that's totally fine. You can skip ahead in the video to the actual playthrough of version 0.9.5.1. Otherwise, I would strongly recommend bearing with us as I work through these notes, because there's some pretty important information coming up here. Alright, so here we go. The very first tidbit of news, which is very important, is that they've dropped a release date, which is going to be sometime in mid-June for the full version 1.0 release. They say that the early access period ended up stretching a little bit over from their original estimate of 8 weeks, but their early access is set to wrap with little over 10 weeks as we gear up for the official release sometime in mid-June. They're happy to say that they're on track to meet all the core targets outlined for the version 1.0 release, even if some of the developments haven't quite made it into the game yet. So, important things that a lot of you guys have brought up over the months is that car animations are now finally in the process of being exported to the game, and expect to have all the most important ones for wipers, drivers, and suspension parts included by the 1.0 release. That's really good. If you guys like wet weather driving, I'm sure you didn't enjoy having the rain fall down on the windshield at high speed, or having the wipers just not work. The multiplayer dedicated server tool has been released, albeit in beta, with some of the core features still to be added in the coming weeks to help leagues get some championships going by the time version 1.0 is out. That's pretty exciting. If you guys are planning to run any leagues, do let me know. When I get my full rigid cockpit, I'd love to do a deep dive into more multiplayer content. Being more of a solo hot lap rally kind of mindset guy, I'd love to get in there, jump into the deep end and race with some of you. So the multiplayer ranking system is already working in the back end. However, this is one feature we want to be careful not to deploy it too soon, so the timeline for its public release will remain open. On the content side, version 1 will also see more of AMS 1 oldies with goodies being included, fully revamped to AMS 2 standards. As someone who never unfortunately played AMS 1, I don't know what this is going to be, but I'm sure that's exciting for you longtime fans of the series. I hear they had some really exciting content back in the day. They've also announced some exciting news incoming for the Brazilian stock car series, and they're going to announce that at some point next week. So another bunch confirmed for version 1.0 is the classic Grand Prix cars announced last month, which include the Brabham BT44, Lotus 72E, and McLaren M23, bringing 1970s Grand Prix racing to Automobilista 2. This is especially exciting for me because I just watched the movie Rush from 2013. Chris Hemsworth goes over the Niki Lauda and James Hunt rivalry throughout the 1970s. The sense of danger and excitement from that period is something that seems to have by and large disappeared from Formula 1, so it'll be great to recapture a glimpse of that glory in the simulator over the next couple of months. And over here they just show you some in-progress development shots of the Lotus, McLaren, and the Brabham. They're also working on an F Retro car to fill out this field. I believe they're going to feature a V12 variant for that car as well. They also drop one last important note, which is that save for an eventual minor hotfix, version 0.9.5 is going to be the last large AMS2 build deployed during early access. So this is going to be as close as you're going to get gameplay-wise to what you'll eventually have in the version 1.0 release. Now, they spend quite a while talking about licensing content in the time of the bug, which shall not be mentioned on account of certain algorithms. They are talking about a lot of the content. I suppose that their community and people, certainly in my comments sections over the weeks, have talked about that AMS2 lacks licensed content. It doesn't have enough things that people want to drive. It doesn't have GT3s, doesn't have GT4s, doesn't have enough licensed open wheelers, enough licensed tracks, doesn't have this legendary track or this other one. It kind of looks like that they're really scrambling to include a lot of the content you may expect from a modern day simulator, and props to Reza being such a small developer for them going out on a limb to actually license all this content, especially during such an arduous time. It must be absolute hell trying to get this done while most business are in shutdown and sort of internal review mode during this period. So we're going to briefly talk about what they say, because this has a lot of important tidbits about what's potentially to come in this game, and if we read through the lines, we can work out roughly what may be coming over the months. So here's what they say. While generally speaking, we can count ourselves among the lucky few that have not had our operations largely affected by the ongoing pandemic, the same unfortunately can't be said about other businesses, including some we are doing business with. Motorsports activities have obviously come to almost a complete halt, which among other things make it harder to schedule a recon trip for a track we have licensed, or to collect data and recordings for cars we are modeling. Sounds quite reasonable. The main bottleneck caused by the current circumstances has been on the licensing front, especially with cars, as the big manufacturers have been forced to greatly limit their operational capacity. Unfortunately, that includes marketing, legal, and financial departments. All pipelines a licensing deal needs to go through before we can include their cars in the game. Things are progressing, but very slowly, and this unfortunately is already compromising our planned release schedule and even the ability to announce these upcoming cars. So that must be really frustrating for them, because leading up to the 1.0 release, their marketing machine would be in full gear by now. They would want to be announcing like, hey, you guys are getting Porsche, you guys are going to get the Nordschleife, you guys are going to get all of these other things that we're going to talk about soon. Again, we are reading between the lines for a lot of these, but it'd be so much more helpful for them to launch with a list of confirmed licensed content, especially in the GT3 and GT4 sphere, which they now can't do on account of the bug. We had an estimate release of a couple of sweet German cars to the end of this month, but those aren't clear to go yet. And at the current rate, it seems unlikely the GT3 and GT4 cars we had scheduled for the end of June will be all clear to go until then. So that's very unfortunate for us, but honestly, it's more unfortunate for Reza themselves. Again, the marketing blow that this gives to AMS2 is hard to quantify at this point. But we can read through the lines here. So based on an old screenshot we saw a couple of weeks ago where they seemed to tease a Porsche 911, I believe it was, on what looked to be the Nürburgring Nordschleife. If they're saying we had a couple of sweet German cars, now either they're referring to a couple of models of Porsche, or they're referring to Porsche and any number of a combination of Audi, Mercedes, and potentially BMW. So that's, if you have a GT3 or a GT4 grid, it's very likely that at least one or more of those would have to be included in order to round it out. So that's very potentially exciting news. I hope at some point they can make the announcement, people can understand what they'll be getting into with the 1.0 release. So, under the current circumstances, we can't even be assertive as to how quickly these will eventually come through. Could be a week with one brand and a month for another. This could cause us to reassess our release strategy, going for staggered, brand-centric releases instead of class bundles. We'll need to wait and see how things develop in the coming weeks before we can decide and confirm how we go about it, so please bear with us a little longer. So it would be, I think, very unfortunate if they have to do brand-specific releases. I would like to see AMS move away from the rFactor model where they monetize and drip feed every single car and every single track or every single manufacturer. It's not a particularly upfront and honorable way of dealing with your user base. It makes a lot more sense to give people a whole collection of cars in a class. That way they have a bundle that they can purchase and then suddenly get straight into great racing with, let's say, a slew of GTE cars or a slew of LMP cars, rather than having to buy disparate bits here and there to kind of put together the racing simulator they want, and by the time they look back, they've spent over $100 getting there. So I really hope that AMS2, or Reza rather, stay true and honest to their consumer base, and that they kind of offer people what they need in packs and focus on the gameplay experience rather than monetizing every individual car. So the good news is that even though the process is moving slower than we would have hoped, none of our licensing targets are stuck or in serious risk of not coming through. Great news. Most of the deals, in fact, have been secure for a while, with the models they cover are already far along in production, and they make for quite a dreamy list, from 60s to 70s vintage touring cars to 80s Group C beasts, 90s British and German touring cars and mighty GT1s to modern supercars. I mean, I'm thrilled. I don't know about you guys, but in that collection there's something to pretty much make everybody happy. There's something incoming for every motorsports taste, agreed Reza, and once it rains it will pour as many of them are already in-game. As soon as we get them through the remaining licensing hurdles, we will add them to the AMS2 beta for some bug hunting and to release not long after. Best part, with the exception of the street supercars, all cars on the classes listed will be free additional content. So the value that you're getting even from the base game is unbelievable at this point. I have over 120 hours into the game at this point. I've barely scratched the surface. I still drive mostly the same 3 tracks with maybe the same collection of 5 or 6 cars. But I mean, that's me. I'm happy with very little. I'm very Spartan in my tastes. So for those of you guys who get bored very easily, it looks like there's a heck of a lot coming to keep you happy. Moving on, that's the story on the car front. On the track front, we've been having a bit more luck, and for tracks already announced, we're well on track to keep the schedule we'd already proposed for them. Now, this is the truly exciting content because they've actually released names, so you have an idea of what's coming and how far along in production it actually is. So obviously, Hockenheimring and its historical variants will make up the first AMS2 DLC. So the release is held up until shortly after version 1.0 is out, but it's coming along nicely. Some nice work in progress screenshots that they've offered here. An exciting one for us Aussies, Mount Panorama aka Bathurst is likewise taking shape, with trackside objects being modelled parallel to the main mesh previewed below. Release schedule is for June 30th with our first post 1.0 game update. So looking at it, it looks like they've used some satellite data to put together the terrain geometry. I really hope that they use some kind of laser scanning or LiDAR data on the track surface itself. Bathurst is so gloriously bumpy, it would really not be great to smooth over a lot of those surface details with a haphazard approach to modeling, so I really hope that they've gone all out on this one. Now, an exciting one that I had no idea about. They're doing Silverstone and historical variants, which are very well into production, and it's planned for a July 30th release at this point. And for the big news and the namesake of our thumbnail, the one and only Spa-Francorchamps is coming for Automobilista 2. Now, I've seen more than a few people talking about the lack of Spa and AMS2 being a deal breaker for them in the comments, so I hope you guys are reading this, I hope you guys are seeing this, and I hope you guys are as excited as I am about it. So at this point, Spa has become such a motorsports mecca that arguably no sim can be considered complete without featuring it. Ditto, I think the same can be said about the Nürburgring. We are therefore delighted to confirm that Spa-Francorchamps is also coming for AMS2 in full modern and past glory. Now, extra exciting news about this one. We figured that if we're going to tread the ground of this magnificent venue, we might as well do it at full justice. The modern version will feature full laser scan data, and we will also develop a couple of historical variants. What's ironic about this is, I guess, Spa is one of the smoothest track surfaces in motor racing, so having it laser scanned, while hugely appreciated, certainly on my end, is not something that feels quite as necessary as perhaps laser scanning something like Sebring or the Nürburgring or, you know, many other circuits which have a lot more intrinsic bump and micro detail on the surface. That being said, this is by no means a complaint, just an observation. I'm hugely optimistic about this because of Reza's huge roster of open wheeler cars. They're going to be perfectly suited for Spa. You're going to have such amazing racing on this track, especially if it's accurately scanned. So 2 thumbs up, 3 thumbs up, let's move on. So they spend a while talking about and justifying the AMS2 Season Pass, I think because people were understandably somewhat taken aback by its hefty price. This is something we can delve into in time, but it's quite a lengthy blurb. I don't really want to waste too much time talking about this. If you guys are interested in the pricing of the Season Pass or picking up a Season Pass, I'd recommend reading through these developer update notes and actually taking in what they're saying. I'm personally not too fussed. I'm happy with the baseline content. If Reza wants to go ahead and offer the packs one by one, that's probably how I'll be purchasing them. But that being said, if any of them are watching this right now, I think the incredible amount of days and weeks invested in the videos that we've done leading up to the release of AMS2. Heck, if you guys want to sling us a copy of the Season Pass just so I can keep up to date with the insane amount of content you guys are developing on and continue making these videos, I would be hugely grateful. Okay, on to the second part of this update, version 0.9.5.1. There's a lot of changelog and a lot of patch notes for this we won't get into in complete detail, but we will run over the gradual synopsis of everything thing. A few very important things that they've announced, a few very exciting ones. If you've been on their forum, if you've kept up to date with the crazy guys tweaking their custom force feedback files, so there's a few things that Razer have done to make things a little bit more palatable on that front and give us better potential for force feedback down the line. Well, we're not going to get into the notes one after the other, we're going to get into this overview. So another week of intense housekeeping as we approach the 1.0 release. Once again, a lot of the focus has been on physics and force feedback, which is music to my ears, with a lot of fine-tuning resulting in another good step forward all round. As handling for most cars now became pretty representative of our version 1.0 target, from now on most of the physics and work will concentrate on reviewing fuel consumption, tire and engine wear, temps, and reliability properties. So this will be great for you guys looking to get into the multiplayer and the league side of things. If the cars actually behave and wear over time as you would expect, it's going to give you much more realistic and close racing. On the AI side, we haven't yet concluded implementing new AI strength logic, so for those struggling with AI speed in lower settings, we ask for a little more patience until we finalize this development tool to provide more consistent performance across the AI strength range. In the meantime, setting around 90 to 110% AI strength and 50% aggression has been quite thoroughly calibrated and should provide the best racing. 3D animations for wipers, suspension, drivers, and other movable car parts are finally beginning to come in. That's great, we've already spoken about that, but that's obviously something they needed to get out of the way before a full release. For those wondering about upcoming content, please hold for more information in our May development update coming up tomorrow. Wow, so they're really dropping a load of information on us here. So just briefly skirting over all of this, they talk about the steering rack damping no longer passing through low force boost setting. This is something I believe that the custom force feedback developers on their forum were asking them to do, simply to allow for more accurate force feedback, because that was it's not essentially the way that it should have worked. So I'm quite excited about delving in and actually testing out the new force feedback, even in its vanilla form. Fix an error in parking force script, adjust lock stop strength, fixed issue with the recent FFB filter occasionally behaving unpredictably, and fine-tuned all car FFB settings. So this will be quite exciting, and a bunch of miscellaneous physics tweaks and a bunch of UI tweaks, the kind of thing that you would expect leading up until a 1.0 release. So mostly just housekeeping from this point on. Now, my throat is getting very dry. This was more talking than I feel like I've done in the last week combined. Let's get into a race. As much as I'm running out of novel content to go over when it comes to testing these force feedback updates, I'm still very excited about testing out what they've changed here and how it manifests in the game. We'll pull up a nice and reliable track and car combination with you guys and talk through the experience. So thanks for bearing with the changelog. Make sure to smash that subscribe to stay up to date with all future AMS2 updates leading up to the full release and beyond. And let's get into the racing. Alright, surprise, surprise, here we are on the Rocco 001 at Brands Hatch. You had a 1 in 3 chance of getting that one right. It was either going to be Brands, Alton, or Adelaide. The reason for that is that these represent the most intricately modeled track surfaces in the whole AMS2 roster. With Adelaide, I don't know why that is, but with Alton Park and Brands Hatch, I know they use a lot of laser scan data, which is very obvious the moment you drive these. So let's try it out. I've got to remember, cold brakes now. Cold brakes cause issues. Brake early, before the gantry. Alright then. So, first thing I feel is more strength around the center. It feels more solid and stabilized. This is something I think that's also controlled by the low force boost. So I've got mine at 10 because I've got a direct drive wheel. So I've got gain at 50, low force at 10, FX at 50, and new spring strength at 10, and then the rest is just tweaked on my DD1 base. So I've not driven today at all. This is legitimately my first lap of this update. And I'm running out of adjectives to use, guys. It just feels good. It's just starting to feel better and better and better. I think I'm slightly getting desensitized to it because I've played AMS now. Can you believe I have more hours in AMS2 than I have in rFactor? And look, that is what happened just then is a testament to this force feedback engine. If that happened to me in ACC, I'd be just spun around right now. I'm getting so much useful detail from the undulations of the track surface. Getting so much detail from the bumps that I'm hitting right here. Every time you see the car, you see the cockpit undulate like that, I'm getting more bump details. I've got to say, it feels a bit uncanny. I've been driving this track a lot in the P1 car, the Metal Moro, so I'm kind of, I've lost my mojo a bit for the P3. Everything feels really slow. But the force feedback feels unreal. Like, the ability to just position the car exactly where you need it is just uncanny in this game. Like, you can feel, I've got to say the scrub possibly isn't coming through. I'm gonna have to test it. I'm gonna have to do some stupid things in this car so we can see what's going on. So I'm gonna oversteer into this. Just gonna, you get a bit of the scrub actually. It's probably why I felt the understeer going into the corner just before. So the scrub's certainly there. The track surface undulations and the grain help you feel that as well. Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of that rumble and grain. I want to test out the lock stops though. So let's stop for a sec. I want to see if they've finally gotten that one right. So I'm going to just rotate. So it's firmer than it was. It feels kind of similar to my road car, because in my road car it isn't an absolute stop, it's like an 80% stop because the belt is still kind of pulling on it or whatever's going on. It's not like a hard stop, so it almost feels like there's a rubber compressing at the end of it on the direct drive wheel anyway. So let's say for me this is enough to know what's going on. You guys may have a different impression. But yeah, center is better. It's still a little vague for me. I'll really have to look into the force feedback a lot more, check the forums, see what everyone's saying, see what they're cooking up. But it seems like another step in the right direction. And as always, this track and car combination is so addictive, I have to stop myself from just kind of lapping on and on and on while I look for reasons to talk to you guys just so I can keep playing. But quite frankly, I think that about covers it. I mean, it's just another, it feels so good, the force feedback in this game. Like, man, I'd be happy with it coming out even like this. It's just, you can just keep the car where you want it. Anyway, I need to stop right now. Otherwise, it's just going to keep going. So I need to go now and edit this video together to get it out for you guys in time for noon-ish over in Europe. So I hope you guys enjoyed all of that babbling and talking. Force feedback, I believe, is yet another improvement. I can't really go through and test all the different physics changes. We'd be here for hours. So I hope that was enough. Really exciting what's happening with AMS2. This game probably represents, my personal best hope for a next-gen simulator that's well-rounded with licensed content. Basically my rFactor 2.5, as it were. And I'm absolutely thrilled. So if you guys enjoyed this and are looking forward to more AMS2 content, be sure to smash the sub, and until next time, I'll be seeing you guys later.